Hey, you're wide receiver Khalil Shakir, right?
I sure am, kid. Here, go long.
Whoa! You're pretty good at football, man.
And you guys are pretty good at pizza.
Oh, sick. Dude.
He is pretty good at football, man. He was making it happen all day yesterday. Welcome to Trainwreck Tonight 363, sponsored by Picasso's Pizza. Of course, get your Picasso's Pizza anywhere across Western New York and anywhere across the nation via goldbelly.com. But I feel like I have gold in my belly after a big win over the Dolphins. Again, was it easy? Was it stress-free? Was it absolutely, a smooth sailing ride? Not at all. So let's get our guy in here, expert on all things. Some call him the trap daddy, but he's always focused on that wife's Etsy. We got him in here. Chris Trapasso, how are we doing, sir? Happy Victory Monday.
Maniac, how's it going? Thanks for having me. You were just hosting me at your awesome tailgate yesterday. So it's definitely good next day to kind of reconvene and go over what we saw inside Highmark Stadium yesterday. Really fun. I was saying it to my dad on the way home, like, I'll never be, and he certainly will never be upset when the Bills are blowing out the Seahawks or the Titans or the Jags, but it's like more fun in those nail-biting games that we haven't really seen that many of relative to how many games the Bills have won over the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, the nail biters and kind of being nervous about what will happen with the Bills has kind of left the fan base. It's more the expectation is to win, especially over the Dolphins. Yeah. We went into it yesterday, though, and we were talking in the pregame at the Game Day Buffalo tailgate. That number was a little bit intimidating, -6, -6.5 for the Bills in a rivalry where they had historically dominated, especially with this quarterback, especially with this head coach. And it just seemed a little bit off. And needless to say, the game kind of played into that. But with that said, pregame, Game Day Buffalo, amazing time. We had the live band. We had George Wilson and Sean Merriman. I was a little disappointed by Sean Merriman's hosting abilities, but George Wilson kind of picked him up on the back end.
Yeah, I didn't see Sean Merriman. Where was he? I would have liked to give him a little lights out. Probably would have knocked me out if I did that to him, but I didn't see him. Did you see him?
Yes, we saw him very briefly. Truth be told, whenever he came to the Bills, I can't even remember now. I want to say what it was 2012, 2013 or something.
He played for like 3 games or something.
My buddy and I, we were so drunk at Soho. I don't say it in any braggadocious motion at all. And he was standing there, Sean Merriman, and we were just lights outing in his face. Like not even across the bar. Lights out in his face, but he was a great time. Obviously, I think he's trying to build like the Lights Out network or the Lights Out media or something. So kudos to him. I mean, he had like 3 news quality cameras. He had a whole crew there. They were checking out the game day tailgate. Great time, obviously, with Wingnuts, the live band, Picasso's, everything holding it there. But it was a lot of confidence, and then it was a lot of more of the same for these Bills home games, Chris. It feels like outside of the Jaguars game, every Bills home first half this year has kind of gone by the same script.
Yeah, slow starts. And I'll get to that later when we talk about maybe the Bills into the future and into the playoffs. Those slow starts are something that have plagued this team. Not in every game, but like you mentioned, in most of the home games this year outside of that Jaguars game, and they've gotten away with it because they haven't lost a home game. And when you're facing the Jaguars or the Titans, you can rattle off 30 straight points. But I do think the record of the Miami Dolphins and the history that Tua has not been that great against Buffalo, although he hasn't always been terrible. It was kind of threw people off to think, hey, like you mentioned, that the Vegas line was 6 points. The Dolphins can score a lot of points. The run game is as diverse as any in the NFL. They finally had Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert back healthy. The offensive line was relatively healthy for them. So this is a team that I think in Miami that at 2-6 might feel out of it. Maybe they're sellers on the trade deadline tomorrow, but I think this is a team that can put up points and will score a lot of points. So it wasn't super surprising, and it almost cost the Bills that slow start, almost cost them winning this game in the division to kind of close the door on, one of these other teams inside the AFC East.
It doesn't alarm me, the slow starts, because they have been able to kind of hit the gas offensively in the second. I mean, I'll talk about what does concern me, though. Like the overall, the big picture slow starts doesn't concern me. What concerns me is the other team's ability to seemingly do what they want in the first half offensively. Again, regardless of the points, I've been seeing Kyler Murray. I've been seeing Mason Rudolph. And I mean, obviously he's a little bit maybe above those two, but Tua Tagovailoa yesterday, long drives where they were kind of getting what they wanted. Now, I don't know if this is like the boa constrictor Buffalo Bills defense, where they kind of see that, they put that on film and they make adjustments, because there would be a great argument for that. But it really does worry me more than anything, the slow starts, Chris, is just the defense. The offense of the other team always seems to kind of have their way with what they want in the first half against the Bills, regardless of scoring.
Yeah, we always hear about the opening script on offense, first 15 plays. And to what you just were speaking to, those quarterbacks have been able to get off to a very efficient, like hyper efficient start on those first 2 or maybe 3 drives to score points or to at least get 3 points early on. That I'm surprised that with a full week of game planning, the Bills defense they weren't really that ready for Kyler Murray off the bat. Mason Rudolph, he wasn't going to throw the football down the field, a lot of play action bootlegs. And we probably could have gone into this Tua game understanding, hey, with Von Miller back, with the concussion history and his history against the Bills, the ball was going to come out quickly. So maybe this wasn't a game for the Bills to come out and be just kind of in their base nickel defense and sitting back in zone, not trying to pressure Tua, not trying to make him make second and third read throws. That the lack of the game planning executing early on, or the game plan executing for the Bills, is a little bit worrisome. I totally agree with that, because it kind of, I don't want to say it was predictable how the Dolphins were going to move the football, because they've certainly had their rough patches. But when that offense is humming, it's humming like that. Underneath throws, yards after the catch, and a very diverse and complex run game. So it felt like the Bills should have been more prepared, especially facing an opponent they get 2 times every year.
Yeah, it would seem like that was the 2022, early 23 McDaniel Dolphins that they played yesterday, not the ones who had been struggling for the second half of 23 and obviously so far this year. They did have their pieces back, so there is an argument there. But let's kind of bridge into the second half. Obviously, the vibe at halftime wasn't great, but everyone, I think, my vibe was they survived because they had 6 points and the Dolphins have been able to do basically everything they wanted. So that was the vibe there. You go into the second half where on offense, I think there was a point where Josh Allen was like 10 of 12 for like 80 yards or something, something like really bad yards per attempt wise for him. But then I kind of flipped the script, because I know you look at a lot of film. I don't know. Have you looked at any of the tape yet from this?
I haven't yet. No, not yet.
Okay. Well, my only thinking is that there were a lot of short intermediate routes, obviously, for Allen at the beginning of the game. And then you look at the Ray Davis touchdown. That really wasn't that much different. That was a quick, he sees the swing pass open and there's one defender to beat between him and the end zone, basically. Was that the game plan from what you saw? And again, I know you haven't had time to look at film, but was it the short and intermediate attack? Because it seemed like they did kind of open up in the second half, but it seemed like they really wanted to attack quickly early.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, what I do know, and these things obviously kind of go in tandem. I'm a big numbers guy too, and I saw Josh Allen's average depth of target was only 3.7 yards against the Dolphins yesterday, which is his lowest ADOT in his entire career in a single game. So whether that was the Dolphins defense dictating that, or that was the game plan to get the ball out quickly to Shakir, to Kincaid, and then especially the running backs in the flats. We saw James Cook catch a couple of those passes, obviously the Ray Davis catch. I think that's maybe, I don't want to say more of what Joe Brady wants from Josh Allen. I just think he wants that in the arsenal, because you are going to see, we've heard it 1,000 times, the 2 deep safeties don't allow the big plays. The Bills don't really throw it down the field. Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs don't really throw it down the field. They're kind of running counter to what the defense is throwing at them. If you're going to only have essentially 9 guys in coverage and subtract 4 or 5 of those if they're rushing, 4 guys in coverage underneath, we're going to just dink and dunk all day. And that's what the Bills did. What I think, too, I mean, we talked about in the first half that the Bills' defense wasn't very effective, stopping the run, Tua getting the ball out quickly. The offense was really moving the ball at a reasonable rate. And to what you said, I think is spot on. It's a sign of a good team that they can have a would-be touchdown turn into an interception at the goal line, the shallow cross to James Cook get dropped that would have been a touchdown, and then those 2 phantom holds that negated a Josh Allen touchdown run, and you're only down by 4 points going into the half. A lot of even mediocre teams, like a team like say the Seahawks or something, they're getting blown out at the half, or a team that's really bad is not even close score-wise leading into the third quarter. So I think your vibe to think, okay, they're only down by 4 points, it could have been way worse. It has felt like, despite some slow starts for the Bills at home, ironically enough, for how good they've been at home, they haven't really been in a 21-3 or 27-6 hole. I think that's a sign of a good team. And very quickly on the offense in the second half. I just think they stopped shooting themselves in the foot. They were making those, conversions on third down, Josh Allen runs. They ran the football well, started to get Keon Coleman involved on the play action, Mac Hollins, Dalton Kincaid. So it was just not making those bad decisions or dropping the football or just not executing as well. They were a lot more smooth. And once they got into the red zone, they scored in the second half.
Yeah, so they come out in the second half. I mean, and we had a game that was, oh, you're good. You still got that beautiful profile picture. Don't worry about it.
That's about 10 years. That's about 15 years old.
Shush. But so we go into the second half here, and a game that was, as tight as your shoestrings kind of gets a little bit looser. All of a sudden the Dolphins are still moving the ball, but they're scoring points, and the Bills were just nonstop on offense in that second half. So it was very interesting to see, but I kind of want to jump ahead. I mean, the Bills take the lead. You got all that action. You got the missed extra point from Tyler Bass, so you get all that narrative going on. Now, between the third quarter and the beginning of the fourth quarter, it felt like a century. Because I don't know if you remember, but there was a player injury. We had the McDermott challenge on the Tua down on the fourth down. There were all kinds of things that basically made that period of time, real time, take about 20 to 25 minutes. Dolphins end up coming back into it. Obviously, there's a period where the Bills are up 27-20. They have a chance to close them out. I think as a fan of the team, you would have liked to see the Bills close the door there. But Dolphins obviously drive the field, go get the tying score. Were you as surprised as I was that they didn't go for two at 27-26? I was shocked.
I'm sitting next to my dad, and we have these group of guys from Grand Island that are awesome next to me, very smart fans. And I said to everybody, I mean, not that I'm the guy that everyone's listening to, but I was like, I'm afraid that they're going to go for two and that the Bills are going to have to stop that, and they could potentially be down. Then the Tyler Bass missed extra point really gets shoved to the forefront of everyone's minds. You just felt like at 2-5, you have 2 yards to potentially take the lead and force the Bills to, maybe it's a different scenario with Tyler Bass mentally. If that kick is to, if you miss it, you lose. If you make it, but he could kick that and think, hey, if I miss it, we're going to overtime. I was very surprised. Mike McDaniel with the analytics, being a younger coach, that once they scored that touchdown, didn't go for two because they never got the football back.
Mute monstered myself a little bit there. But yeah, just shocking because it's like the one thing that stuck out to me, and I kept saying this talking point over and over to my section, it's exactly like you. They don't listen to me, but I'll talk if they're going to hear me anyway. They hadn't stopped Josh Allen in that second half. So I know that last drive ended up being a little funky, but that was the biggest thing that threw me off in them not going for two. You have an offensive guru who's supposed to be this new age coach who's hyper aggressive.
Yeah.
In most states, I know that that's kind of worn off a little bit from the initial when he burst into the league, but I was just shocked when I saw Sanders and co running on. Now, with that said, I was happy, obviously, because I was like, okay, tie game. Let's go down and get a field goal and end this nice and easy. It was anything but that, obviously. Josh Allen tries to wiggle out of the pocket like he's done so many times against the Dolphins, but it kind of closes on him. We get a 2nd and 14 into a 3rd and 14. You get the offsides on the Dolphins where Josh wants the snap for the pre-play. I would really like to see the snap get made there.
He was mad, right?
A veteran anger for sure. I don't point things out too often when they don't end up paying us, but we're going to talk, Bills Super Bowl potential and everything. If they're in the playoffs, we need that ball snapped. We need a free play on 3rd and 9 with the ability that Josh Allen can create and everything. But you get that play. And then I want to talk about this play for a little bit. Obviously, the 3rd and 9 down the field to Coleman. Before we even talk about the hit, the flag, anything, did you hear that collective gasp in the stadium when everybody realized that this was like a 40-yard fade to Keon Coleman?
Yes, you could. It was a collective, like, what is going on? Like, they're just kind of tossing it up, and you could see right away that he didn't have a lot of separation. They probably could have called pass interference too. The guy was tugging his back, but it was like, that's what you drew
battling.
up.
Keon, kudos to Keon. He was battling for that ball during that play too.
And I think that's important where what's funny is it was such a dramatic ending with the 61-yard field goal. But again, I thought right away, and even when they showed the replay before Poyer gets over, a lot of tugging where that ball could have been a spot foul, and it would have been like I don't want to say a chip shot, but about a 50-yarder where they probably could have just run the ball once or twice, got it into the middle of the field or where Tyler Bass wanted it before kicking it. But yes, hats off to him for trying to catch the football. The ball hits him in the hands, and then he takes a shot to the helmet. It was weird too that Jordan Poyer was like, I think after the game, oh, I didn't think that was a dirty hit. What else am I supposed to do? It was like helmet to helmet. Like it was textbook 15-yard penalty.
It was textbook 50. Right. I mean, obviously, like there's many discussions you can have here on the Poyer angle for sure. So let's get into it for a minute here because I'd rather end on a happy note with the Bass. First off, what are those robots where you had to punch and the head?
I remember those as a kid. Yeah,
that was Keon Coleman's fucking head. So just there's no doubt about it. It was a penalty. It literally shot up. I was very nervous that we were looking at neck, head right away. I know we're waiting to hear apparently on an MRI regarding the wrist. But I mean, I think that was a blessing that it's only that for Bills going forward. But the Poyer hit. This is getting brought up a lot on social media. It's a thing that gets a lot of action because, it's people yelling about Poyer, it's negativity, et cetera, like that. A lot of people are citing the as well. Me, this is just an overzealous player trying to do his part. I do not think that there was any dirty intent on Jordan. I do not think he's a dirty player. I think he's a pretty class act as a player, and I think it was just an overzealous attempt to make a play in a big spot. To be honest, I don't even know if he really needed to hit Coleman. I think if you take Poyer out of the equation entirely, it's probably an incomplete still. But I just wanted to get my piece out on that because I see a lot of people being like, yeah, he had the penalty in week 2, and now he's got this one. He's a dirty player. We just maybe didn't see it all the time when he was at the Bill. I don't believe that, and I don't buy into that. And I'm just curious. I know you're not going to slam him, but I'm just curious your thoughts on what you're seeing there and what you kind of saw overall.
Yeah, I mean, in the stadium, seeing it on replay and that they call it, a personal foul, like unnecessary roughness, defenseless receiver, I didn't instantly think that it was dirty. I felt like it was the correct call. But when Keon Coleman is jumping and Jordan Poyer is ranging from the deep middle, I think it is still pretty hard for any safety to accurately hit the receiver, not in his face mask or his helmet like Jordan Poyer did. So you're probably right too, that if there is no Jordan Poyer on that play or he's distracted or on another part of the field, it would have been a very low percentage catch for Keon Coleman, although he has over the last couple of weeks made those catches. I didn't at all think that it was dirty. And even going back to his time in Buffalo, I don't remember seeing from other fan bases thoughts that Jordan Poyer was dirty. Was he a hard hitter? Was he super aggressive? And that was part of why he was so good? Sure. But there was never anything that he maybe was teetering on the dirty player label. So I didn't really take that away from it at all.
Yeah, that's just why I was so shocked to see the takes. I'm remembering back, I don't remember him ever being fined extensively or even at all for plays when they review those types of things on a weekly basis. Again, I really think it was just an overzealous attempt to make a play in both tries, honestly, the week 2 game and this one as well. And I think, I think there's kind of it's a weird situation, especially every athlete knows he's going to get killed on social when you have a big penalty or something that costs the team the game. So in his post-game presser, does he take it on the chin and say it's my fault and kind of open the floodgates for that? Or does he stand his ground? He chose to stand his ground for sure, which I do respect at the end of the day. And I try to look at the body of work when anything like this comes up, and it just does not seem like, oh, this is, another one to the list for Poyer. It seems like these are more outliers. So they just wanted to get those words out on that. But speaking of positivity and speaking, what do you got?
No, I was going to say even if you think that even if you're mad today and you're like Jordan Poyer's a dirty player, he never was really a stupid player. And that would be a really dumb time for a dirty hit. You know what I mean? It's one thing if someone's on the bottom of a pile and he steps on their leg with his cleat in the first quarter. Okay, maybe that's the time that if you want to be dirty, then be a dirty player. But with the game on the line, I'm going to hit him in his helmet now, that just wouldn't make any sense. So I think we can squash that. I don't think he was making a dirty hit whatsoever.
And I wouldn't call him a dirty player, but you said it irresponsible or reckless at the time. Does Jerry Hughes under Rex Ryan ring a bell? As far as things go, big penalties and obviously when they shouldn't come. With that said, it's a happy ending for everybody. Bass trots out. Let's talk this first. The crowd buildup in those 20 to 30 seconds. I mean, there was nervousness for sure. I wasn't and I'm a big Bass supporter, just to be clear. I think you've seen that probably on the TL. But I mean, even I'm nervous. 61-yarder is not a chip shot for, I don't care, Aubrey, even from Dallas. I still think there's just so much distance between a kicker and a 60-plus yard field goal that it's always a variable. For him to just drain it down the middle, there was almost a vibe in the stadium. I don't want to say it was negativity, but at the end of Mighty Ducks 3, if you're familiar, when they pass back to Goldberg, at the
Yeah,
very end.
okay,
It's
yeah.
like they're sending out Bass. Like I heard people saying they should throw a Hail Mary, all this stuff and things like that. At the end of the day, it ends up being the right call. It ends up Bass comes through in the clutch. I'm pretty certain this moves him to 10 of 11 in this situation, right? 2 minutes or less, game tied or like tying kick, and he has the opportunity to go ahead or make a tying kick. The only miss is that Kansas City game, and I get why it wears so thick on people. I totally get it, but it's very cool to see that kick happen. And I forget who said it, but it was almost like the demons were kind of vanquished, at least for now. Again, if he misses another extra point next week against the Colts, they might be back. I can still see people lingering, but it was a cool moment, Chris.
Absolutely. And I think you mentioning that is important, that people can take that away from this stream, that he is 10 of 11 in those situations. So that's really good. And don't just have recency bias and say, hey, he missed one, let's cut him. And like in those clutch situations, Tyler Bass has come through. Here are my thoughts without hindsight going into the kick. When they didn't move the football any further, he almost tries to squeeze one into Dalton Kincaid. It was actually a really good pass because there was a defender underneath, dives for it, doesn't get it.
Oh, real quick on that play.
Yeah,
the Dolphins dropped 11. Did you see that?
I did.
I was like, I almost started screaming because I feel like nobody noticed.
I did not notice that live, but I've seen it on the timeline afterward where I've seen like the stills where I'm like, oh my God, they dropped 11 people. I don't know if I've ever seen that in an NFL game before. So my thoughts were, okay, they definitely have to kick.
Yeah.
And there were a few people around me in this section. This is terrible. He's going to miss this. The Bills are going to lose. Just going through the emotions of how old school Bills drought emotions. My only thought, I'm not going to say that I was like, oh, he's going to nail this. I was nervous about it being blocked.
Yeah.
Because those low, obviously 61 yards usually go a little bit lower. Bass has had a few of these misses. It's really where the misses started last year in the playoff game against the Steelers. Had short, like a chip shot was blocked.
Yep.
So the second that the ball was hit, and then I didn't hear that immediate ricochet, I thought there was a decent chance. And a few of the people around us were like, he doesn't have that kind of leg. And I said to someone, I was like, he may not make this, but that's why the Bills drafted him. And he's shown that he can make those longer kicks. So to me, it wasn't about, does he have enough leg? Like that was always the thing with Stephen Hauschka, even Dan Carpenter to a certain degree.
Unfortunately, that was the deal with Stephen Hauschka on like 47-yarders.
Yeah,
just to interject here real quick. At the Shakir family pet adoption event, Bass and his missus were there. Nice. I didn't do any extended interview with him, but when I went by him, I just asked him one thing. I go, game on the line, how far can we count on you from? He said 67. So at that point,
that kick would have been good from 67.
Exactly. So I knew going in exactly like you said. I don't know where that sentiment came from, but the idea that this kick wasn't going to have the distance was crazy because I saw even the live announcer was like, Miami doesn't have anybody back to catch this if it's short.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, you shouldn't even waste somebody back there if it's short. You need all 11 rushing trying to block.
And so from our angle, so my dad and I have seats front row of the 300 section on the visitor side. So we can't really tell if the field goals go in, but when I saw that it wasn't blocked and then it wasn't like a duck, I was like, well, it's definitely going to get there. It's just a matter of, did he hook it? And there was no wind for like the first time in any Bills game in the last like 3 years. So I was like, this is definitely going to have long enough. And obviously went right down the middle. What I'll say too, just analytically, it felt like to me, and you probably feel the same, that so much for Tyler Bass hinged on that kick. If he misses that and they lose in overtime, he may not be on the Bills roster today. But now he has all the confidence in the world. He just striped a drive 320 down the middle, has to feel so good about himself, even in a game where he had one go off the upright and misses an extra point. Could totally, and because I'm the biggest believer that with kicking, when you have the leg, when you have the technique, it is like 90% in your head. Mm-hmm. So it really felt like such a watershed moment for him. Like could have gone either way, and it ultimately went in a positive direction for Tyler Bass.
Yeah, that's perfectly said, because it's like when he misses the extra points, the thing that people always point to is, well, now you got guys making 50-yarders like routinely or whatever, or like someone can make a 60-yarder to win. Well, now he's done that. So you can whine about the extra points, you can do all that stuff, but if this guy gets called upon in a spot where you need him to be the hero, he's done it and he can do it. So that is big. And like you said it perfectly. Watershed moment. It's always like that flow chart, right? Like on the one side of the flow chart, he's no longer a Bill today. And on the other side of the flow chart, it's everything's over and we're ready for the second half of the season for sure. Yep. Speaking of the second half of the season, Bills are 7-2 now. 1-3, lost 2 to some good teams, won 4 in a row. I think it's totally fair to have Super Bowl talk, as they're probably like, what are their odds right now? Let me see if I can pull it up. Super Bowl, they're the 4th best odds at 9-1.
Yeah, so we can talk about it.
Lions, Ravens. That's very fair. So I put this in the rundown, and I was curious from you, and I think you alluded to it begin with, but let me give you the floor. Let's do 3 reasons first why the Bills can win the Super Bowl.
They first can win the Super Bowl, which I guess I'll just start with the layup, and I'll just kind of run through these quickly so then you can have the floor as the host here. Because of Josh Allen, the touchdown that he throws to Quentin Morris yesterday, he can make something out of nothing. We know that. All the commentators on TV are going to bring that up a lot. He has a quarterback rating in the playoffs of over 100. I believe it might be, maybe not Aaron Rodgers, but it's near the top of active quarterback passer ratings in the postseason. So he has shown up big in the playoffs. That's huge. This, to me, at least through 9 games, and I think analytically shows this as well, this is the best run game that the Bills have had in the Josh Allen era. And I am the biggest proponent of, I don't really love the 50-50 run to pass split, but I understand that with the weather and if you have to go to Baltimore or Kansas City, or even if you're hosting a bunch of home playoff games, you're probably going to get a game where you're not going to necessarily want to throw the football 50 times or even 40 times. So the run game and the diversity of the run game, James Cook being the slasher, the speed guy, lateral elusiveness from Ray Davis, and then kind of the in-between with Ty Johnson, I think certainly matters a lot. And then I had a third one. Oh, the third one is just the fact that they have been there, and that I can't say that they have seen every situation with 13 seconds and when to call timeout and when to go for it, when not to. But this, even though there are a lot of new pieces, McDermott, Josh Allen, a lot of the offensive line, some of the guys on defense, they have been in these big games now where any game that they play in the playoffs should not feel like the lights are too bright for them. So to have Josh Allen, a great running game. Oh, yeah. And actually, one other one, the diverse set of wide receivers that they're able to have a game without Amari Cooper, kind of back to the situation offensively where they were before the Amari Cooper trade. They still score 30 points when they have, again, 2 or 3 touchdowns wiped away in the first half. Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox hasn't really done a ton yet, has 8 catches. Curtis Samuel, same thing. You're getting Khalil Shakir kind of in this featured, almost like a more yak version of Cole Beasley that it don't really know when you're facing the Bills, who are we going to plan to stop? And I think that's important. We saw that with Stephon Diggs kind of dissipating out of the offense last season, that there were times where the offense was like, who's going to give us these answers? Now the Bills know that they have those type of players, and there's just 5 or 6 different types. Mac Hollins having a career game yesterday. So I think those 3, run game, Josh Allen, diverse set of weapons, and then we'll sprinkle in the fact that the Bills are a veteran-laden team, especially with the brain trust in terms of playoff situations and playoff moments. They've been in a lot of different scenarios.
I like that. Okay, let me run through my 3 real quick, and then we'll get to the naysayer options. First, elite defense against non-elite QBs. I think at the end of the day, when the Bills play a non-elite quarterback, and for me right now, there's only 3 in the AFC that would scare me. With all due respect to CJ Stroud, the 3 that scare me are Burrow, Jackson, and Mahomes. Yeah, Burrow is like, an in-between, because it just feels like at any point he can go nuclear, and at any point the Bengals can be a fucking joke. For the Ravens and Jackson, it's kind of interesting because the last time they played, Lamar obviously had a good game and the Ravens kind of had their way with the Bills. Besides that, I think McDermott's kind of owned Lamar in that matchup. So I like that. And then, of course, you have Mahomes. But again, besides those 3, I feel, and that gets you to the divisional, basically. In the playoffs. So again, I feel confident with that. Trenches when healthy. Obviously, if Greg Russo's foot starts acting up like it has been in years past, that could be an issue. But I just feel like on both sides of the ball, with all due respect to Mitch Morse, I feel like they're the most solid units that we've had since Josh Allen has been here. Honestly, on both sides of the ball, because you can get depth, you can get guys rotating in, and you can make it happen. And then my last one is a sellout. Josh Allen, guy can make plays whenever you need it to. It doesn't need to be perfect. Dolphins, the touchdown to Quentin Morris yesterday was the perfect example. With 25 out of 30 NFL QBs, that's probably not a touchdown. Could potentially be a turnover, could potentially be like a big disaster play, ends up being a go-ahead touchdown for the Bills. Now let's get to the part that fans might not like as much, but you got to be ready, and that's part of being a fan. Why can't the Bills win a Super Bowl right at this point in their season in 2024? Do you want me to go first on this one?
You go first, sure.
Okay. I'm going to steal this one from you, I think. I think we'll both have it. Slow starts. You get behind 2 scores to a Kansas City. You get behind 2 scores to a San Fran. Good fucking luck, because those teams are elite. They've been in the spot. You want to talk about the Bills being in the spot. Yeah. Those 2 teams have been in there for like the last 3 to 4 years for sure. So that could absolutely be doing them. I had it as a pro on the one side, elite defense against non-elite QBs. I got to mention it. Elite QBs do kind of own McDermott in the playoffs recently. Whether it was Mahomes last year, I know people will point to AJ Klein was in the lineup, things like that. But yeah, you had the Burrow the year before. Like the Burrow the year before really demoralized people because it just looks so fucking easy. Throwing it over the middle to Chase, just running around. It looked like the Bills were on skates in that game. So that always sticks out. And then this does go back to McDermott, but it's almost like the whole team is like just the decision making. Sometimes in the you look at the Texans game, the way that one went down, like it's just you hope that it won't be a schism where it needs to lean one way or the other. Historically, McDermott has been aggressive in the playoffs. I know people point to certain things last year, like the Hamlin fake punt and stuff like that. But historically, he has been aggressive when it comes to giving Josh the opportunity to be successful. But sometimes the decision making can run a little ragged. What are your anti Super Bowl thoughts for the Bills?
Well, 2 that you mentioned with McDermott. I said as a reason why they can win because they've been there. But until McDermott, makes what seemingly is the right decision in crunch time in like a divisional round or an AFC title game, because if you remember back, and I'm sure you do, the AFC title game in 2020 against the Chiefs, it was a blowout. Oh, Chiefs outclassed them. The Bills got down inside the 5 twice, in the end of the first half and at the beginning of the third quarter, and had 4th and 2 and 4th and 1, and they kicked field goals. And I was just like, oh my God, I cannot believe with that offense too, that Bills offense was unstoppable. So that the slow start, I'll kind of borrow those 2 from you.
Yep.
2 others, the lack of a truly game-wrecking defender in the front 7. Now, if Matt Milano returns and he looks like Matt Milano again, maybe that changes. If Von Miller isn't invisible like he's been, obviously Ravens game, the game script didn't really help him. Against the Dolphins, didn't really do much. But I think when you look back at these Super Bowl winners, Chris Jones, Shaq Barrett had 90 or something pressures on the Buccaneers. A lot of the teams that for as much as we want to focus on the offenses and the quarterbacks, they've seemingly beyond them have had that Chris Jones making that key play late in the game. I think the Bills have a bunch of really good defenders. Taron Johnson is a baller. Greg Rousseau is having a great contract year. Christian Benford is really emerging. I don't know if they have that true superstar where it's like, all right, 4th down, you stop him, you win the Super Bowl. If they have that player, maybe Von Miller 2 years ago could have been that guy. So that, and slight disagreement here, but I think the Bills defensive line, now hopefully they make some type of trade. I don't want to say that every team that faces the Bills is going to be able to run the football as well as the Dolphins did. I think they have a very, really diverse, complex, like I mentioned earlier, run game.
Yeah.
But in the middle with Daquan Jones and Ed Oliver maybe aren't playing to the same level they did last season. I'm a little concerned about a Ravens team or a Chiefs team that when in doubt, even if Patrick Mahomes is confused by Sean McDermott's scheme and all the disguises that they throw at them, or it's Lamar Jackson or Joe Burrow, that those teams could maybe just run the football and maybe not be ridiculously efficient, but efficient enough to steal a close win. So those things are mostly on the defensive side for me, along with the slow starts and Sean McDermott, that maybe could keep the Bills, again, a very talented and productive team, away from winning that elusive Super Bowl.
That run defense storyline will be interesting because any team would be crazy not to be trying to put that into their game plan facing the Bills after what we just saw, right? Miami was able to kind of have their way and build tons of stuff off of it. And
the counter to that is, I don't really think you want to try to throw the football a lot against the Bills because, number one, if their pass rush gets home with the length that they have with Rousseau and Epinesa, and even Daquan Jones is a big guy, and then all of the players that have bought in and are really talented and understand the system in the secondary. Like Rasul Douglas can take the football away. Christian Benford, like I mentioned, has been just like a glue to wide receivers. Even without like the 2 all-pro safeties, I think the safety spot has been fine. And then you have great coverage linebackers. So you're right. Teams facing the Bills should be like, look, we're maybe going to actually go 1994 here and try to run the ball 30 or 40 times. We don't necessarily want to try, unless we have Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow or whatever. But if you have a non-elite quarterback, it's probably smarter to not have him throw it 35, 40 times against the Bills.
That is most likely the plan indeed. So Bills will have to be ready for that from all the teams around the league. Obviously, they're going to Indianapolis next week. Just real quick, as we put a button on Trainwreck Tonight 363, I know you're a man of, NFL tastes. Anything that you saw around the league yesterday that stuck out? Just a couple of me, like Dallas is obviously in a world of hurt. The Sam Darnold story kind of continues there in prime time for the Vikings. But besides that, I mean, anything else stick out for you?
To me, it's just how many like absolute train wreck teams there are. And I want to just drop train wreck because I'm on this show.
I love it.
The Raiders, like if you look at their roster, it's like, how is this an NFL roster? You look at the Saints. I mean, they've had a bunch of injuries, but the Saints roster is really, really bad. Truly, I mean, they have Dak Prescott, who's now hurt, and CeeDee Lamb. The Cowboys roster, and obviously Micah Parsons, but the Cowboys roster is just devoid of any type of depth. I
don't think they realized it, but the Cowboys definitely remixed the 2011 Eagles roster where they just have like 6 total good players, and then everybody behind them is
it's like
a
replacement level. It's like a practice squad guy.
Dream team.
Yeah, it really is. You're like, oh man, Dak Prescott.
Yeah.
CeeDee Lamb, Trevon Diggs, Micah Parsons, and like you can't name another person on the team. Carolina Panthers the same way. So there's usually like 1 or 2 teams like, oh, they're battling for the first pick. And right now the Patriots are the current owners of the number 1 overall pick. It's like there's 5, 6, 7 teams at 2-6, 2-7, even some of those teams with 3 wins like the Cowboys, that it's like, man, it's hard to, I mean, they probably have to play each other down the, final half of the season, but it's like, I can't find too many more wins for some of these teams. It seems like for as much parity as there is week to week, there's more like seemingly they should just kind of quit on the season teams at this midway point than there normally is.
Most definitely. I mean, you look at the teams right now, Chiefs, Lions, Ravens, Bills. You have the 49ers.
Wagons.
Nobody else.
Commanders.
Oh, yeah. But you have nobody else below 10-1 to win the Super Bowl. So it's clearly just a wide open outside of those top 3 to 4 for certain. We'll put a button on this episode. You watched any Sabres recently?
Okay, yes, I made it. I made it a point, and I've been lifelong Sabres fans. Just like we're talking, obviously, Tom Nikashik, Mo Gilney, LaFontaine was at the Odd when I was a kid. I was like, this season, I am going to try to watch at least 1 period of every game, and like if the games are okay, I continue to watch. But I get to the point because I'm such a big Sabres fan where when it's just they're not getting any shots or they're just getting out muscled in the corner for every puck and stupid penalties, I get like mad and I turn it off and I just like follow it on my phone. So those back-to-back, the Friday, Saturday, we're like, okay, these 2 teams are facing the Islanders, like can't score a goal. They look much better than the Sabres, a team that's been right with them, kind of rebuilding. In the Red Wings, they clearly look like the better team. To come out of that weekend stretch with no points was just such a downer for me. I know it's an insanely long season. Hopefully Lindy Ruff can really rally the troops, but it was kind of a depressing weekend on the Sabres side of things.
Yeah, it's Sabres fans have my sympathies, and I'm one of them. You're one of them as well, for sure. I mean, hopefully they can turn this around. They're going to hopefully get Benson back in the lineup, but I don't think they're 1 player away from exactly changing. The only thing is, I guess their EPA equivalent in the NHL was really good before they lost Benson.
It was
maybe. Apparently they were high action. Like they should have technically won one of those games in Prague and stuff like that. But it's like Sabres fans are just so over that shit at this point. It's literally Al Davis status. Just win. Nothing else matters.
Can I give one last Sabres point?
Of course, you can.
I know that there is this pushback against, hey, like when a bad team is not playing well, don't necessarily just put it all on their best player. That happened with Jack Eichel a lot. Like, hey, Jack Eichel's still scoring over a point a game. Don't blame it on him. I don't want to call out Rasmus Dahlin, but to me, for someone that is just a shoo-in for the All-Star game every year, you can just put him in there. He's going to be an All-Star, and he's very offensive for a defenseman. I think he makes way too many mistakes. I do not think he's nearly physical enough and good enough controlling the puck at the blue line, not turning the puck over. He just doesn't seem like an NHL all-star like that you just put in every year because he's so good. I think he's someone that if you would look at the Sabres roster, say, okay, he is one of the better players on the roster, so don't really just totally over criticize him, but he's someone I think it almost starts with him he needs to be better. And whenever I will occasionally tweet out something negative about Rasmus Dahlin, I get like 10 Sabres fans like, he's great. He's one of the best defensemen in the NHL. And I'm like, I don't watch a ton of like other random NHL games, but I just cannot believe that he's truly one of the best defensemen in the NHL.
Now,
I don't.
Can I pick your brain for a second? Do you remember the Sabres offseason? Did anybody say one time that they had a good offseason or that the moves they were making were good?
0 times.
Okay, because I just want to clarify that with you before I say this next point. Because everybody now is on the bandwagon that like they didn't do enough of what they were doing this offseason. That like Zucker and McLeod were good, but they didn't bring in enough. Like I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Like
yeah, I see what you mean.
Like, because they're like literally like, why didn't we do more of that? I go, you people were talking about this offseason like it was like Chernobyl. Like, and all of a sudden you want more Chernobyl, but I guess people just want explosions one way or the other. Make sure you're following Chris Trapasso on all platforms. Obviously, he's got the TikTok still working, folks. He doesn't fall out there. But make sure you're following Chris Trapasso, the Trap Daddy, on all platforms at Chris Trapasso. Chris, any sign-ups before we get out of here?
No. I'm just trying to dive into this Bills film, and I have to watch a bunch of rookie and second-year quarterbacks for CBS. I'm just pumped about. I was saying it to my wife, like this time of year, like when the weather gets a little colder. We had great football weather yesterday for that Bills Dolphins game.
Great.
It's like
I shit on fall weather more than anybody. I make fun of the elite people.
You do.
I
love it.
But you know what? I just want to clarify the difference between me and all of those trolls and all those nonsense on the internet. I'll admit when I'm wrong, and I was wrong yesterday.
I respect you for that.
Proven wrong.
That it's like a sign of this is when the games start to get really like they really mean something where you can look at, you're going to start to get, open up the playoff picture and see, okay, if the Bills win and this team loses, what seed are they? Who will they play? Like, I love that time of year. And it kind of like my brain goes into that mode. Once the temperature gets into like the 50s, you can see your breath in the morning going to the tailgate. So I'm just really excited for that overall. For the Bills and just for the entire NFL season, AFC, NFC, to see kind of where these teams fall in this year's playoff seeding.
Speaking of that, before we go, 20 seconds. Playoff picture would help out a lot with the Bucs win tonight. How's that happen?
Maybe a team finally takes advantage of some Chiefs mistakes and some slow starts for the Chiefs. Yeah. And I mean, without Mike Evans, Chris Godwin would be tough, but this Bucs team is, I think, pretty well coached, has a decent defense at times. They could do it, but that's what we need to see that we haven't seen yet from any of these teams, being able to take advantage of when the Chiefs aren't at their best.
All right, make sure to take advantage of all the insight and knowledge from Chris Trapasso at his platforms. Make sure to follow Trainwreck all week long. We got Pay the Bills, we got Crossing Swords, all going on. But most importantly, go make sure to have a good night now.